I've always been meticulous about my devices. My cell phone was reserved for close friends and family, while my landline acted as a kind of shield from the outside world. It was a number I barely used, more of a bait for scammers than anything else. So that afternoon, when the caller ID displayed an unfamiliar number with a distorted area code, I felt something was off. This wasn't just another scam. Something about that call felt wrong. The voice on the other end caught me off guard. It wasn't the perfect English that scammers usually use, but something different. He claimed to be from the IRS and started talking about an urgent debt. He asked for personal information and credit card details, but what really made me uncomfortable was the tone. It wasn't authoritative, like usual. It was calm, almost eerie. A desperate attempt to sound human, and that only amplified my discomfort. "If you're really from the IRS, why doesn't your number show up on the caller ID?" I asked, trying to stay composed. The man hesitated. A long pause, almost theatrical, but deeply unsettling. Then he answered, though he didn't sound convincing. Something in his voice was off. It wasn't just his accent or the words he used. It was the feeling that he wasn't who he claimed to be. I kept playing along, pretending to jot down information as I tried to figure out how to end the call. He grew more frustrated, but he didn't give up. With each passing second, the silence between his words seemed to grow, like the phone carried something more than just our conversation. Finally, I hung up, relieved but uneasy. From that moment on, my house never felt the same. At first, there were no obvious events, just a lingering sense of discomfort. The silence felt heavy, as if something were lurking in the shadows. At night, faint whispers began, almost indistinguishable, like the wind creeping through the cracks in the windows. But then, footsteps. Whenever I turned to investigate, nothing was there. Just emptiness, but emptiness that seemed to watch. My mind tried to rationalize it, but the constant feeling of being on edge wouldn't go away. I started avoiding the landline, but even so, the presence seemed to linger, as if it had seeped into the air. One night, while trying to sleep, the phone rang. The sound was so sudden it almost made me jump out of bed. I answered, my voice trembling, but on the other end there was only silence. Not the usual silence, but one that felt almost tangible, filled with something inexplicable. I hung up quickly, but the fear had already taken root. I searched the number online and found reports of others receiving similar calls. Some described disturbing events, others just vanished. My heart raced. It wasn't just a feeling anymore. Something was truly wrong. That night, I woke up to a loud noise. My landline was off the hook, emitting a low hum. When I went to put it back, I felt as though something was watching me. Turning around, I saw a shadow moving quickly. I ran to turn on the lights, but there was nothing there. Since then, I've lived with a constant feeling of dread. I don't know what it was, but I know it wasn't just a scam. Something came through that call, something still with me. And sometimes, when the silence is too deep, I feel it waiting. My father passed away 2 years ago. The scene of his stroke is still burned into my mind. Him lying on the floor in front of his office, his head tilted back, lips purple and swollen. It felt like a nightmare, but it was real. No one knows exactly who found him first. My mother, devastated, all but disappeared from the world. She became a shadow of herself, trapped on antidepressants and tranquilizers. For days, she didn't leave her room, and the house, once filled with life, became a mausoleum of silence and pain. I inherited some of my father's things, but nothing haunted me as much as his old cell phone. I could never bring myself to erase it, sell it, or even turn it off completely. It was like that device held a presence of him that I couldn't or didn't want to let go of. Even though I didn't know why, I kept it charged and functional, as if waiting for one last call. A goodbye that never came. It all started on an ordinary day. I was in the parking lot of the building where my father used to work. His phone rang. Reflexively, I picked it up and looked at the screen. An unfamiliar number. My heart raced, but I answered. On the other end, a voice crackled with static. distant and strange. Hey, is everything okay? I'm here now," it said. The familiarity in the tone was unsettling, but something was wrong. I asked who it was, trying to control the panic rising in my chest. The response, though, was even more disturbing. "I'm the devil," the voice said, calm and casual, as if it were something ordinary. My body went cold. Before I could hang up, the voice kept talking, mentioning details that no one could possibly know. It spoke of my father with intimacy as if they had a connection, and even more terrifying, it knew things about me that not even my mother knew. After that phone call, my life was never the same. I started hearing whispers. They came when I was alone at work, trying to concentrate, or in the dead of night when sleep finally claimed me. They were distant voices, barely recognizable, but laced with mockery and something profoundly evil. Whenever I looked at my father's cell phone, a chill ran down my spine. I feared another call or message from an unknown number, but oddly nothing came. The absence of further contact should have been a relief, but it became a far greater torment. The silence was oppressive, as if something were lurking in the shadows, watching my every move, waiting for the right moment to strike again. Days turned unbearable. My mind was constantly on edge, trying to catch any sound, any signal that something was about to happen. I started avoiding places where I'd be alone, but I isolated myself even more. Even with people around, the feeling of being watched never left me. The phone, now a cursed object, seemed to pulse in my hands every time I picked it up. It was the link between me and something I couldn't comprehend. The nights became unbearable, and the dreams, when they came, were filled with faceless faces, shadows whispering incomprehensible secrets. Even after all this time, the memory of that call still haunts me. Sometimes I wonder if it's all in my head, a product of the pain from losing my father. But the voice, the knowledge it had, that was real. The phone is now tucked away, but I can't bring myself to get rid of it. It feels like a reversed talisman, caught between my fear and a connection I never wanted. The calls and messages stopped, but the silence that replaced them is worse. I feel something waiting, something that hasn't finished. This unseen presence is a constant reminder that not all stories have an end, and sometimes true terror isn't what we see or hear, but what continues to linger in the dark, waiting. That night, everything seemed calm and silent. The clock read 3:05 a.m., and the room was engulfed in darkness. I had just woken up, still trying to understand why I had been pulled from sleep in the middle of the night. The oppressive silence wrapped around me, broken only by the faint glow of my phone screen. The sound of the phone ringing felt strange and out of place in that deep quiet. With a pounding heart, I grabbed my phone and unlocked the screen. A number I didn't recognize flashed before me. I stared at it for a few moments, weighing whether I should answer or not. Curiosity and fear wrestled within me. In the end, I answered, "Hello?" My voice was weak and groggy, as though I were speaking from some dreamlike haze. On the other end, I heard a soft, trembling voice, a child's voice, though unfamiliar. She was crying, and each sound seemed to come from a distant, shadowy place. "Hi, sir," the voice said, fragile and terrifying enough to make my blood run cold. "My name is Emma." I stood there unsure of what to say. Emma? A child? How did she get my number? What the hell was going on? My mind struggled to piece together a puzzle that felt completely out of place. "Emma, dear, is everything okay? Why are you calling me?" My voice was low and shaky, trying to keep calm. Her breathing was shallow, as if struggling to speak, her fear growing more intense with each passing second. "I can't talk to anyone else but you," she said, her voice breaking. "I've been punished." Her words froze me in place. Punished? What did she mean by that? Who would punish a child? And why would she think I could help? Every sound from her mouth felt like it belonged to a nightmare, real yet distant. "Emma, Can you tell me your father's name? I asked, my voice becoming firmer, though fear still lingered. My last name is Martin, she responded. Her voice was nearly inaudible now, as if she were fading away. I only remember 3 numbers, 203. Those numbers haunted my mind. They seemed significant, but I couldn't grasp what they meant. My chest tightened. I didn't know if I was dealing with something real or the imagination of a desperate child. Without thinking, I grabbed my backup phone and dialed the police. I spoke to the dispatcher, trying to stay calm and provide useful information, but the only thing that felt real was Emma's voice, still echoing from the other end of the line, weak and frightened. Emma, can you tell me where you are? I'm here to help, I asked, my voice firm now, though my fear still simmered beneath the surface. Then I heard the phone ring again, the same voice now more desperate than before. He's coming now, Emma whispered between sobs. My heart raced. Static filled the line and distant screams began to emerge. Amid the chaos, I heard a deep, distorted male voice, a sinister whisper that froze me in place. It happened too quickly. The sound of the line going dead was the last thing I heard from Emma. I screamed her name, but there was only silence. I knew something terrible had happened, though I couldn't understand how or why. The void that followed was more terrifying than the call itself. I lay in bed, trying to return to sleep after the unsettling call. But no matter how hard I tried to close my eyes, Emma's voice echoed in my head. Who was that child? How did she get my number? And what did the numbers 203 mean? I rose slowly and walked to the kitchen, needing fresh air, but every step felt heavier than the last. Everything seemed unfamiliar, like I was trapped in a nightmare without escape. I poured myself a glass of water and sat in the living room, trying to make sense of it all. My hands still trembled and cold sweat ran down my face. What had happened to Emma? What did those numbers mean? Was there some hidden significance? I forced myself not to dwell on it further, but my mind refused to let go. I returned to bed, trying to focus on the emptiness of the darkness. Then the sound of the phone shattered the silence again. Fear surged back. With my heart racing, I grabbed the phone. The number was unknown once more. I inhaled deeply and answered. Hello? My voice was trembling more than I wanted. This time the voice on the other end was different, deep, gravelly, and terrifying. I warned you I would come, it whispered menacingly. Who are you? What's happening? I asked, trying to stay calm, but my fear drowned out any rational thought. There was no response. Just the sound of heavy breathing, as though whoever was there was standing right beside me. Silence followed, stretching for what felt like an eternity, until the distorted voice spoke again. The numbers Emma gave you. They lead to me, and there's no escaping. My entire body shivered. That voice, the same one that haunted my dreams, seemed to come from a place beyond reason. I tried to ask more questions, but the line went dead once again. Panic took hold. I sat there, frozen, unsure of what to do. That number, those numbers, 203, they were following me. My chest tightened, and the silence of the house became a prison. The only sounds I could hear were my own shallow breaths and the echo of those threatening words. I closed my eyes, desperate to find peace, but I couldn't. Those numbers were etched into my mind. Something was telling me that this night still held dark secrets I couldn't fathom. I spent the rest of the night awake, completely lost in my thoughts. The call with Emma, the distorted man's voice, the numbers 203, they were all tangled in my mind. I couldn't understand how or why, but I felt trapped in a nightmare with no escape. When morning came, my head was still in chaos. I forced myself to believe that it was all a bad dream, that my mind was playing tricks on me. But deep down, I knew better. I walked to the living room and saw my phone still sitting on the table. Fear swelled inside me, but I had to try and understand what was happening. I unlocked the phone and hesitated before checking it. My stomach churned just thinking about answering another call like that. I grabbed my laptop and started searching for the number. but no answers came. The name or location remained hidden. The silence online was even more unsettling, and deep down, I knew the truth I was seeking wouldn't be found there. I remembered the numbers Emma had given me. 203. I searched for any connection, but found only forums filled with people reporting similar messages and calls. Stories of disappearances, unexplained phenomena, eerie presences. They seemed like echoes of my own experience. The most terrifying part was the lack of a clear explanation. There was no obvious connection, but something told me those numbers held a hidden meaning. I might have been grasping at straws, but the coincidences kept piling up. Throughout the day, my anxiety grew. Whenever the phone rang, my heart raced, but there were no answers. The silence remained. And it was that silence that became my torment, like something invisible lurking, waiting for the right moment to return and haunt me again. The days turned into nights, each filled with restless thoughts. The call from Emma, the man's distorted voice, the numbers 203, they were all still with me, etched into my mind. I felt trapped in a loop of fear, unable to escape. One night, as I lay in bed, my phone rang again. The sound shattered the silence like a sharp blade. My body froze, unsure whether to answer or ignore it, but desperation pushed me to press the button and bring the phone to my ear. "Hello?" I whispered, my voice trembling. On the other end was only silence. My heart pounded as I waited for a response. But the silence remained. The tension was almost unbearable. Suddenly, a deep, distorted voice broke through the emptiness, like a sinister whisper from beyond. "You should have stayed quiet," it hissed, sending chills through my body. It was the same voice, the one that had haunted my dreams. I was trapped in that moment, unable to move. Who are you?" I demanded, my fear overwhelming my attempts to stay calm. There was no response, only laughter. An eerie, chilling laughter that seemed to echo from everywhere and nowhere at once. It was deafening, tormenting my ears. Then silence returned, heavier than before. I hung up the phone, but the sensation of something still being there, lurking, remained. The fear grew stronger, as if that voice had somehow taken root in my mind, binding me in endless terror. The following nights were filled with sleeplessness and dread. Whenever my phone rang, my heart leapt, but there was never any answer. The silence persisted, and in that silence, fear nested, waiting to strike again at any moment. Days turned into nights, and the weight of everything became unbearable. The call from Emma, the sinister man's voice, the numbers 203, they felt like they were etched into my soul. I was trapped in a nightmare with no escape, and the truth felt darker than I could comprehend. One night, as I tried to sleep, my phone rang once more. The sound tore through the silence, sharp and cutting. My body tensed, and I hesitated, unsure if I should answer or not. But the desperation took over, and I picked up the phone. "Hello?" My voice was faint and trembling. On the other end, only silence. My heart raced as I waited for a response, but there was nothing, just the empty void of the line. Then a whisper echoed, soft and chilling, almost as though it was being breathed directly into my ear. "You'll never escape," the voice said, fading into the darkness. And as the line went dead, I knew this was far from over. The numbers 203 still haunted me, and that silence, haunting and endless, had become my prison.